Good morning. It is week 21 of Sunday school, and this week Israel is in exile. So the stories that we have this week are in some ways very familiar to us because they're stories about Daniel and his friends, and they often come up in our Sunday school curriculums. You've probably heard these stories before. So Daniel himself is a young man when he is taken into exile. He's probably 12 or 13. He's probably your age when he goes off into exile. And he stays in Babylon his whole life, and he has a very long life. So we have stories of his youth, and we have stories of his old age. And there's some themes that run through it. The first theme that runs through it is that Daniel is faithful to the God of Israel. So there's a first story in which Daniel and his friends are being groomed for positions in the Babylonian government, and they refuse to eat the food the Babylonians give them because they are going to stay faithful to the kinds of foods that God allows and doesn't allow way back in the books of Leviticus and Numbers. They are faithful to what God said. They're faithful even when it's very risky. And we have the story of the three men in the fiery furnace. And they're thrown in this fiery furnace, this deadly hot furnace, because they refuse to bow down to an image of the king. They're faithful. And then finally, at the very end of these stories, at the end of Daniel's life, we have the story of Daniel being thrown in the lion's den. And he again is thrown in the lion's den because he will not pray to the king. He will pray only to the God of Israel. And because of jealousy, he's thrown into the lion's den, and obviously his enemies hope that he will die there. Now, the thing that is interesting is that God protects them. When they refuse to eat the fancy food of the Babylonians, God blesses them with good health and strength. So much so that the Babylonians are amazed. And when the three men in the fiery furnace refuse to bow down and they're thrown into this deadly hot furnace, they're protected. And they come out. And they don't even smell like smoke. And Nebuchadnezzar, the king at that time, comments, "I threw three men in, and yet I see four men in there." Probably an angel who is protecting them. And of course, Daniel in the lion's den, God shuts the mouths of the lions so that they can't consume Daniel. And it's not that they're not hungry, because when the king's advisors are thrown in later, they're eaten up, they're devoured. So God protects his people. That's a theme that runs all the way through these stories. There's something important to say about the way that God protects his people, and that's at the end of this week's readings when we come to the story of Esther. But most of the story of Esther is in next week's readings, so I'm going to leave it there, and we'll talk more about the way that God protects next Sunday. Enjoy your reading. Have a great week.